So this whole drama was a train wreck. So this is going to be a full-on rant video, and there will be a lot of spoilers about the finale. Hi everyone, this is Ming. I have a lot to say about this drama. I have 7 pages of notes here, so let's get going. So my favorite Thai actor, James Jirayu, has done 12 dramas so far in his career, and in my last video on James dramas, I reviewed the one I liked the least, which was Game Saneha number 10. So The Deadly Affair is now number 11, and I'll talk a little bit about number 12 a little later. There were so many problems with this drama. So very briefly, the storyline is about a guy named Om, played by James, who kills someone in a drunk driving incident. Now, the person whom he kills, Pat, is engaged to the female lead, Jay or Jetiya. So Jetiya hates Om with all her guts, and he goes to prison. And his girlfriend, Ming, is pregnant with their child, and they were going to set up their life together. So Ming faces a lot of hardship and she kills herself. And that's how the story starts. I watched the entire thing twice, which is more a testament to how loyal I still feel to the James Jirayu fandom than about the drama itself. So I watched it on Mondays and Tuesdays on Channel 3 in Thai, and then I watched it the next day on Netflix with English subtitles. So that's a total of 76 hours that I will never get back. So after the first few episodes, which were spent on setting up the narrative, it was really like being in a tunnel, watching the train come towards you, knowing that disaster was going to hit you, but praying that somehow a miracle would happen. But it didn't. So let's talk about each of the characters first. So James G plays Om Apinan. So his character is named Om, which is very appropriate because I found myself having to chant it many times during the nonsense of this show. So the premise for his character was really very interesting and different from anything that James has played before. Wow, finally, a dark and mysterious character for James G. It was the most vanilla prison ever, and Om, the electrical engineer, becomes the one to fix all the wiring in the prison. He's a criminal. Have you all lost your senses? He could totally burn the prison down. I couldn't feel anything for Om. He was like a martyr in waiting. He was good at everything. He was nice to everyone. He seemed to have no faults except that maybe he's a little bit too gullible. He never lost his temper till right at the end when he tells Mina to calm down. Why can't they have a male lead who has vulnerabilities and failings? The only vulnerability was that, he was a little bit ashamed to say that he had kind of been hoodwinked by the whole Ming-Mina situation. But no, they have to make him Mr. Perfect. He is a Gary Stu. How boring. So Gina Ina Salas plays Jay or Jetiya, the female lead. So Gina is James' first female lead character who is younger than he is. Now Jay, oh my god, she's bratty and rich and spoiled and revengeful and mean. She's so sanctimonious and she has no sense of self-awareness. She's such a hypocrite. She condemns Om for drink driving, but there are so many instances of her getting drunk and insisting on getting into a car. She makes the most nonsensical decisions. Her idea of punishing Om is to take him to her father's private island to be tended to by these 2 wonderful caretakers. If that's your idea of punishment, please punish me. She does so many inappropriate things with her staff, the way she treats them. She's rude, she makes them run really ridiculous errands. She orders people around, especially her pet, masquerading as the company lawyer, Pigan. And she's so goddamn rude to her father. It is so unacceptable. But she never gets called out for this behavior in the show by anyone. So her hatred for Mina is so extreme, even before Mina has done anything except be accomplished and attractive. Or maybe that's it. And why is she respected at the end for turning Janya Resort around? She didn't do anything. Gan and Om and a host of other people did everything for her. She just sat there and looked pretty. And then everyone claps for this precious princess. Now, I can't tell if Gina is a good actress or not because her character was so unlikable. So if that is the basis for good acting, she did a really good job. But I found it very hard to judge her because I found that she played these extreme emotions very well, you know, crying a lot, screaming at people. And frankly, I don't think such big emotions are very impressive because it can be very shrill and a little bit over dramatic. I don't think there were many places in the script that tested whether or not she can do the inner feeling acting, so I'm quite neutral about that. So let's go on to Om and Jay. I didn't get this couple at all. I felt zero chemistry. Their whole relationship was so toxic and neurotic. And part of this has to do with the show because there was no build-up of their relationship. They would go from, you know, being at loggerheads to suddenly having a sweet moment, and then the show kind of veers off to other people and suddenly they have another sweet moment. I mean, it was really very schizophrenic. And the show really didn't give us time to understand this couple or figure out why they're together at all. So their relationship was like being on the Viking fun ride at an amusement park. You go back and forth, and at the end of the ride, you go nowhere, but you really feel like throwing up. At least that's how I felt. So because the production wanted to make it very intriguing and keep, you know, reeling the audience in, they kept playing around with the relationships. So Om wants to win Mina back, but he has feelings for Jay. Jay kind of is developing feelings for Om, but she hates him at the same time. She has no feelings for Gun, but she accepts his engagement ring, and then she holds on to him as if her legs don't work anymore. And then Mina is in love with Om and wants him back, but she's going to marry Suchat. I mean, it was a complete mess. So till the end, I couldn't understand why Jay and Om were together, and frankly, I didn't care. I was totally not behind this shit. It was not a shit. It was not even a sampan. They were more like two rubber duckies floating separately in a bathtub. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. This show just made me so insane. By the time the finale rolled around, I could have cared less about the leading couple. In fact, during the finale, which was supposed to be the most exciting episode of all, I was doing a jigsaw and occasionally glancing at my phone because I wanted to know how they were going to wrap up this very complicated story, but I was not really interested anymore. This was also how I kept my blood pressure down while watching this really annoying finale. So I think this relationship is going to bomb after the final episode because it is built on thin air by the scriptwriters who just needed to fulfill a romance part and did a very bad job of it. So many fans on Twitter were complaining about the lack of attention to the Om and Jay relationship and the lack of romantic scenes. I thought the kissing scenes were technically okay, and James has improved a lot since the early Fish Lips days. But you know, even during the Fish Lips days, his relationship with the female lead character was always something I was rooting for, so any little kiss, even one on the forehead, would just send me into a titter. But between Om and Jay, two good-looking young people, I thought they looked more like they were posing for stock pictures. And in a way, it was true. It was very obvious that the production had cut out many of the scenes between Om and Jay because those scenes sort of came out in the music video as well as the trailer. So what did the production do to appease fans who were complaining during the drama? They released these photographs of these romantic scenes. I mean, what? Okay, next we have to talk about the real star of the show, Ming, or Mina, played by Namwan Pulita. I mean, she did a fabulous job with this character. Her character was the most interesting, and she was definitely the lead character because everybody wanted to know what happened to Ming or Mina. who cared about what happened to Om and Jay and Suchat and all these other people around them? She was really the center of attention. So the Ming Mina character had so much potential, and the production actually did quite a good job of building up her backstory, but they went totally overboard and they turned her into this psycho bitch at the end whose whole life and insanity were based on the fact that she was rejected by her first boyfriend. Pat was a downright jerk, but by the time I knew the whole of Ming's story, I didn't really care what happened to her before or after either. And I really disliked the way they made her look like a slut, sleeping with so many men, even though there were circumstances that led her to sleep with several men. But by conservative Asian standards, that means she'll be condemned by the majority of the audience, regardless of the circumstances. In comparison, Suchat, who is Mina's husband, but also Jay's father, yes, very complicated, kind of gets off scot-free despite his dipstick buffet line of women. And Mina looks so much worse. So she has a much more painful redemption than Suchat, who kind of gets away with everything. Maybe his punishment was that totally ridiculous and pointless scene where he releases baby turtles back into the ocean because he has suddenly had a change of heart and become this environmentally friendly, compassionate man. I bet you when Om and Jay turned around and left, he made those turtles into soup. It would be laughable if it wasn't so pathetic to use that scene to show that he was truly a changed man. Maybe the most problematic part for me with Mina's character was how she allowed her young son to be part of all the shenanigans around her. I mean, the true victim in the whole story was Nong Mak. So a little word about Khair Chaturika, who played Ming. I love her. I've loved her since Game Saneha, and I really wanted her to end up with James' character Nai in that show, but it was not to be. So I was very happy to see Om and Ming being very romantic in episode 1 of this drama, but it went downhill after that, and so it was not meant to be. So better luck next time. But my God, the number of tragedies they placed on this one woman in the space of less than one episode of this drama is the true criminal act of the production. I shan't talk much more about Suchat, who must be one of the worst fathers I've encountered and an overall contemptible man. But he couldn't even be the best villain in this show because he was totally overshadowed by Kun Paul or Park, who, is really, really vile. I shan't talk about these two terrible characters anymore because merely mentioning their names makes me feel like I need to take a shower to clean the stench off. Now, on to a few of the side characters. So, G, or Jay's younger sister, is played by Enjoy Tidarat. What was the point of her character anyway? To show that everybody loves Om? Her over-caffeinated cuteness wore off very quickly and became very tiresome. She goes to university. Doesn't she have any friends? Why are her dates automatically with Om or Gun? And we have Gun, who is played by Pop Tachaton. So Pop was also in Pakon Sonrak, and I found him extremely stiff there. So I think his acting has improved a little bit, but he is still very wooden and he has a long way to go. So Gun is Mr. Fix-It and nanny to J and G with a part-time job as the company's lawyer. So his main job is to appear like a superhero at any time and any place as long as J or G or their father calls for him. I felt very sorry for Gun because he loves J and that love is unrequited. But again, he's this perfect man with no flaws. He just waits around while the little girl treats him badly and leads him on. And then at the end, he just feels very sad and forlorn. I suppose we're supposed to like this kind of good guy, but he's just so sappy. And in the end, what does he get for all his sacrifices? Jay goes off with the guy who can bake the burnt bars cheesecake and wire a building. There you go. So the good thing about this show were the sprinkling of side characters like Win and Wiwa and the caretakers. They were so charming and endearing, and they added a lot of levity to the show. I really enjoyed their appearances because it took me away from this very stressfully overworked script and characters. They were so normal and likable. So there were a lot of very pointless things in this show, and I'll just name a few. So what was with all these Om is such a good baker of burnt bus cheesecake scenes? It really did not add to his character or the story. And it seems like just a deliberate attempt at fan service, as well as to make his character seem even more perfect. Because you know, it's not enough to be a martyr and a saint, you also have to bake. Other nonsensical things were like Jay walking into the morgue after Pat's death and talking to his body. Like, can you really do that in real life, even if you have money? And Ming is not just human, she's an amphibian. She can stay underwater for ages and then emerge in the middle of a roaring thunderstorm. And her clothes defy gravity. And this was just ridiculous. I laughed so hard at that scene, even though it was supposed to be so sad. When Om goes to jail, Ming needs to use all their savings to get medical treatment for Om's mum, who is very ill. And then she loses her secretarial job and she becomes very desperate and she commits suicide. But later on, he tells Mina to run away with him to Chiang Mai, where his mother has vast tracts of land. I mean, come on, make up your mind. Isn't there a continuity editor in this production? Another example of how nonsensical the stories and characters was with Pawini, who was Mina's assistant. Pawini suddenly discovers that she has a conscience after receiving a shitload of money from Mina to keep her quiet and just before she scoots off to America to a new life. So she decides that, oh, she's going to tell Suchat and Om all about Mina because, you know, she has a change of heart. And you know what? They believe her! Like, what? This was the woman planning Mina's downfall and you believe her? And in the finale, when they have Jay and Mina fighting on the cliff, they must have had a long heart-to-heart tea session on this cliff while fighting with each other because Om manages to drive around, look for them, get sidetracked, to go pick up Suchat's bag, to go to the hospital, and then go back, search for them, drive to the place at the cliff, run through the forest, and find them just in time to catch Jay before she falls off the cliff. It can only happen in a drama. No. Let me correct myself. It can only happen in a bad drama. I was so fed up at this point that I wanted both women to fall off the cliff. One last example from the finale. So Mina's going to go off to jail and she's being arrested, but she asks Om to let her see her son. She gets her wish. So she goes back to the resort and has, you know, a walk on the beach with her young son while she explains that Mommy hasn't been a good girl. I mean, yes, I know you have to have closure in this show, but this is utterly ridiculous. But this really contrasts with when Om was charged in court and his mother fainted and they dragged him out while his mother was on the floor. There are so many more examples of how the script or the characters were really pointless and ridiculous, but my life is too short to dig them all out. So in the midst of this very complicated plot, there were three important things that I felt were not resolved. Does Om know the whole history about Ming and Pat? If he doesn't, then he's kind of a poor, pathetic character. If he does, and he doesn't react and instantly jumps to forgiveness, that is also extremely unreasonable and unrealistic. Doesn't he have any grievances? Is he human? The second question for me is, who is Nong Mark's father? So Ming is absolutely certain that Pat is the father, but Pat says he wore a rubber. So did she do a DNA test? I think at the point that Pat died, it was a little bit too early, and anyway, she wouldn't have had the money to go and do it secretly on her own. Om had no reason not to believe Ming. Although, I mean, most men like to think that they produce strong swimmers, so I guess it's a matter of pride as well. So this point should have been nicely wrapped up in the show. But please don't do a season 2 just for this. One train wreck is enough. So does Om know that Mark is not his son is the other question. Now that would have been a really wonderful scene to include in this drama. Circling back to James G, who is the reason I watched these dramas in the first place anyway. I love James shows where he looks like a matinee idol. So his earlier shows, right? Kunchai Putipat, Pariwarada, Game Saneha. I loved him as Asa, who was the most dressed down and unglam character. But it was because the role of Asa was so rich and so wonderful. So in James' 2 most recent dramas, Karat Rak or I'll Be Alright, and this one, The Deadly Affair, Pisawat Karta Game, James' characters are just not that interesting. And for me, what kind of made it worse is that I didn't like the styling. In these 2 shows, I thought he was dressed okay, nothing spectacular, but I have a problem with his vacation hair. In some of the scenes, they dress him nicely, he looks really great, you can see the full, James G power. And then in other scenes, he looked like he had just come out of quarantine and couldn't find a comb. I know that sounds really cruel, but that's how I felt. I know this was filmed during COVID, but Gina looked fine. Why can't you? I know James G is a studio actor and there are limits and restrictions to the kinds of scripts he is offered. And maybe this is already among the best of the Channel 3 scripts, which is very sad because it is so tired and so tiring to watch. So I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I ranked Pisawat Karta Game or The Deadly Affair number 11 on my list of James' 12 dramas so far. So I'll do a quick mention of I'll Be Alright or Karat Rak. It is the only James drama I have not made a review video of to date. And I'm not going to do one. I rate I'll Be Alright number 12, the worst of James dramas so far. And why? When I disliked The Deadly Affair so much. Now the premise for I'll Be Alright was also quite interesting. It was a comedy drama starring the incomparable Ann Tong Prasom as an older successful business lady who falls in love with her intern played by James. But I'll Be Alright was so boring and uninteresting. I forgot that it was airing for weeks at a time while it was being broadcast. So The Deadly Affair made me want to throw my phone at the wall and scream and tear my hair out so many times. It just baited and baited the audience. But I kept coming back because I wanted to know what happened next. So I watched faithfully every week, hoping somehow that my love for James G would miraculously save this show, which makes no sense at all, just like this show. And after all those weeks of hooking you in, there was no payoff in the end. So the problem was really quite deep with this drama. So what's my conclusion in the end? I would strongly recommend that you give this one a miss unless you love James G so much that he can do no wrong. But I warn you, this is going to raise your blood pressure. If you really love James G and want to see more of his work, he has much more interesting and charming work out there. So I hope that these 2 dramas were a COVID aberration and that just like COVID, they will slowly fade into the distance and disappear. So if you're still watching, thank you so much for accompanying me as I ranted. I really appreciate it. Till next time, take care and stay safe everyone. Bye!